All right, so I want to talk about debugging now, and debugging is an important part to becoming a good developer. You need to understand how to debug situations to find out what is going wrong in your application. So we're going to keep this extremely simple here because we really haven't touched on Java, the language itself. So I want to stay within this context of our hello world. But I will show you how to debug and how you can set breakpoints and in IntelliJ. So let's go ahead and do some refactoring here. Let's take this away and let's create a new method. We'll call it public. It's going to be static. It's not going to return anything, and we'll call it say hello. And this say hello method is going to take an argument called name. And what it's going to do is it's going to print out hello, and then it's going to put out the name. So here we are with the name. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that whatever we're passing to this is right. So let's go ahead and call this method. So we'll say hello, and we'll set the name equal to Dan. What I want to do is I want to make sure that before this is called, I can check to see what argument is being passed down here. So if we just ran this normally, it's going to say hello Dan. But what I want to do is actually put a breakpoint here. So if I click in the gutter, and instead of running it the normal way, so run, we want to debug. So this is the run, this is the debug. So let's go ahead and debug, and we'll get a different looking toolbar down here, which is going to contain debug information. So it's going to contain a console and some helpful debugging tools to be able to let us look into the application to find out what's going on. So let's, it just stopped. All right, there we go. So now you can see this highlight here. Execution in my program has stopped at that line. It hasn't executed that line yet. If we look in our console, nothing has been printed out. At this point, the program has stopped here, and it allows me to go ahead and inspect some different things. So here is our inspector window, and that says the variables that are created there. So as we had that argument name, we can see it inline here, Dan, and it's also down here. And we can also do some expressions in here. So if we wanted to check some code, like let's take name dot to lowercase is equal to Dan. So does that return, oops, that will not work. Spent too much time in Groovy. So here we're taking an expression, and we want to say, all right, if that argument to lowercase, does that equals Dan? And indeed it does. So being able to evaluate expressions right here in the IDE while execution is paused can be a definite valuable tool to be using. So once you're done, you can just play it and continue execution, so resume the program. There are also some other ways of kind of stepping through the program. So you can step over, you can step into, step into, step out, and so on. So there's just some ways of kind of stepping through your application in the debugger that really lets you get some insight into your application. So if we resume our program, the program is run. If we go to the console, we now see our hello Dan message. So again, I know this is extremely simple, but for those of you who haven't used IntelliJ and haven't used the debugger, that should give you a good starting point into debugging your Java program. So I hope that helped, and let's go ahead and move on.